Hello and welcome to another edition of the Mexican Soccer Show. I'm your host, Cesar Hernandez, and today is all about Liga MX. It's going to be a very Liga MX specific show. We're going to talk about, some improvements we'd like to see, the growth, of course, we've all seen recently, and much, much more surrounding the Mexican First Division. But before we get into that, let me introduce today's guest. We have Jason Markowitz over in Pennsylvania. Jason, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Hi, everybody. Happy to be on the show here, and yes, should be a good one. A lot to talk about, and hopefully we don't get too angry with each other here and start yelling. But I don't know.
I'm worried we're going to be talking for at least 2 to 3 hours in this, but we'll try to keep it to 60 minutes. All right. Naive Moran over in Mexico City. How you doing, man?
Buenas noches, Cesar, Jason, Tom. It's going to be an interesting show, a good roundtable to sort of share our thoughts about Liga MX's growth in the world, and what can it do to improve. It's how the world sees it. So it should be exciting.
And then finally we got Tom Marshall, who showed up about 3 minutes ago. We're all getting quite angry with him. We're wondering about if we're going to kick him off the show or not.
I was first on here.
Tom, how you doing?
Preparing mentally preparing for the show. Yeah, I'm all right, mate. And I was playing FIFA. I got beat though badly, 4-1 by Portugal.
Is that where you're late?
Yeah, I got beat 4-1 by Portugal with Mexico, and Ochoa was like man of the match. That's how. I mean, it honestly could have been 9 easy. Anyway, yeah.
All right, guys. Well, before we get started on the really nitty gritty on Liga MX, let's first talk about something that happened last Friday. For those who really weren't paying attention, over there at Estadio Jalisco, a game was suspended between Atlas and Tigres because the screen was too low, believe it or not. So our first big question of today is, how can Estadio Jalisco up the ante and be even less prepared to host its next match? Jason, I'm gonna go to you on this first.
Okay. Well, I was thinking, what could make the playing surface less playable. And I was thinking, the old Omnilife turf is probably still around Guadalajara somewhere. I think they could probably scrounge it up. So if they just take that and just kind of roll it out in the Jalisco there, I think that would be enough to stop a game. So I think maybe that'd be a good idea.
I like that idea. Naive, what is your response? What would you? How can they be even less prepared in the next match?
Should not even have an 11, ready for the match. No, I don't see anything else. No, it's just strange that. I gotta admit. It's the strangest thing that I've seen in a while. A screen that this doesn't even look complete. It doesn't look like it has the screen is ready to be viewed by the people. It was just gonna be sitting there. It's just as crazy as it gets in Mexico. And it was supposed to be placed before the date that it got placed, and they did it all wrong. It was just like, tenemos que hacerlo hoy y no hay otra. Like, you got to do it now, or there's no other day, and just put it however you want, and just chunk it in the stadium. And that just looks so bad for the league. It hasn't had probably the repercussions that it could have had, but it's just awful to see that poor organization in front of you.
Yeah, so Naive going with a good little background there, and also telling us that he just not an 11 being prepared. I guess you can kind of say that about Atlas right now, with Rafa being out and Clifford being injured. But Tom, you're over there in Guadalajara. How can they be even less prepared? What would in this fantasy world we can just somehow make it even worse? What would you do?
I don't know. I suppose the screen could actually fall down, and then it's even more. And then it's just in the center circle, and they could play then, because it's probably not actually as dangerous, because once it's down, isn't it? So it could be just used as a wall. You could play the ball off it.
You could have some really good 1-2s. It would just be
you could. It's just be brilliant. That's what an idea.
It'd be a whole different sport, Tom. I don't think it would be football.
Atlas might do better. They might get some points and stuff.
Once you're up 1-0, then you kind of chip the ball into the middle, and then people have to climb into it and try to kick it out. That'd be beautiful. All right, so my
go on.
I was gonna say my quick answer is that I would say you just put another screen around it to try to support it, and just eventually that would just weigh it down even further. And it'd probably just be slightly closer to the field.
Yeah.
So,
No, but
yeah,
it was
yeah.
I mean, go on. Sorry.
You were there. You were actually that you were supposed to attend the match. Like, I mean, just tell us about like even just like the response from the fans like out there.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I was a bit late getting onto it because I got to the game about an hour and a half, 2 hours before, and you're just walking around. I was with a friend, and he was a French journalist, and he was doing some interviews with Tigres fans about the. So then you see it about an hour, and then we were seeing outside. It was like 70 minutes to go until kickoff, and no, they hadn't let any fans in. And then it's like, what's going on here? And then obviously looked on Twitter, and it's like, oh, there's a screen that's the game might be cancelled, and it's like, yeah. I mean, it's just like one of those rumors, and you think, yeah, they'll sort it out. They have to sort it out. And then I don't know. I mean, honestly, in terms of how to deal with a kind of not a crisis, but a difficult situation, I thought it was terrible, to be honest, because about an hour before the game, they let fans in. I mean, imagine this is a classical tapatio. I mean, it could have been really ugly. So they let fans in, and then kind of with about 30 minutes, and then I went inside the stadium, assuming the game was on, and they were putting the cones out to do the warm ups, and then you saw the coaching staff kind of take the cones away, and then you're thinking, I don't think they're going to play this. And then obviously the screen's there. I'm not even sure exactly what the screen is. I'm not sure if it's just like a scoreboard, to be honest.
Yeah, I was confused by that too, because like if it is a scoreboard, it's really skinny. Like it's really.
It doesn't look high tech. It doesn't look high tech. That's
no. But I mean, because in Spanish it's pantalla, so it's obviously like literally screen. But if they play actual footage there, I don't think you're going to see it very well. I mean, that might just be another mess up by him. But yeah. Anyway, so yeah, and then 20 minutes to go, we're in the press box. Do a little video, and then some of the other journalists are like, oh, there's a press conference downstairs. Anyway, for me, this is what I'm saying about, the situation not being dealt with correctly. The journalist, we were waiting in the press conference room for an hour. Nobody came and said anything. Nobody came to explain anything. And Atlas didn't send a tweet to say it was suspended or nothing. The police simply went inside the stadium and told people to go. I mean, there was no official announcement until way after it should have kicked off. And for me, that was really poor from Atlas.
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that it should have been dealt with way before. And then, I mean, I don't know. The other thing is, I don't know, the Liga MX sent out a kind of comunicado today explaining it. And I mean, for me, it just didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it basically kind of, possible for it. So therefore, it was okay to reschedule the game. It was kind of an act of God or whatever. You know what I mean? So therefore, we can play the game again. But I mean, the November international break, Tigres are going to have, I think it's going to be anywhere up to 10 internationals, probably more around 6, 7, 8. But they're starting players, most of them. And so if you look at the relegation battle, it's just a massive advantage for Atlas to play a weakened Tigres than it would have been to play on Friday with the full team. So, I mean, it's just not fair, to be honest. It's not.
Wait, actually, now
right.
I have another question. So I mean, now we're still talking about the big question, but I have another question to follow up. So, because we all saw that tweet from Tigres saying that like, we're heading back. So, did you guys not know that it was suspended until you saw that tweet from Tigres? Like, there was literally nothing from Atlas.
No, it was just all kind of assumptions. I mean, everybody assumed it was going to be suspended because we were all in the press room. We saw the Atlas directors talking to the Tigres directors on the pitch. The players weren't warming up, so it was all just a kind of assumption. And then other journalists that were in the stadium kind of started tweeting that the police were kicking everybody out because they said it was suspended. But I think then the Guadalajara municipal government also sent a tweet out. But yeah, I mean, from Atlas' point of view, I thought they were so slow. And I mean, I don't know, you don't want to read into one incident too much, but these kind of things sometimes really do give an indication of how clubs are run.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a poor response from Atlas. And basically, this is a team fighting relegation, and things aren't going well for the club right now, to be honest.
Yeah. So, I mean, looking over at some of the fan responses, I mean, Jason, we just heard it's going to be pretty difficult to up the ante after this incident that Tom and other journalists had to deal with. But anything that the fan said, how Atlas can, or the Estado Jalisco just in general, how they can up the ante.
A few good options here, ways to make this worse. Carlos Fugazi says they could forget the beer and serve water instead. No one notices because it's Cerveza Sol, which is shots. The Cerveza Sol, not a sponsor, so that's okay. Alex Dusa says they could go with a sinkhole, which apparently like there's actually like in the Purdue University on their American football field has a sinkhole opening up, so that would be a way to go for the field option there. A friend of the show, Eugene Rapinski, Glaza del Gringo, on Twitter says they could renovate all the bathrooms at the same time. Very Atlas move here. And then in the Ravel Morrison section of the responses, Brown Boy P on Twitter says that they could cut Ravel Morrison off on the Mars bars that we talked about before. Causes a big incident, destroys the field. And Omar Santos basically saying that Morrison could pull a Bull Durham and get on the field and open up all the water valves and make the pitch unplayable. So a lot of Morrison options to go with there for Atlas as well.
To stick with if anyone from Atlas is watching, there's some options you can consider right there. So guys,
if there's another tough game coming up and you prefer to play it in the international break, then you've got a list to choose from now.
There you go.
All right, guys. We just talked about the low light of the weekend, but let's talk about some of the highlights from Week 8. What stood out to you? What was perhaps most enjoyable for you? I know we have a few examples that come to mind for me, but let's go over to Naib on this. Naib, what stood out to you from the weekend?
No, I think with Leon, I look forward to this new process with Gustavo Chavo Diaz. I think they got the 2-1 win over Querétaro, who's struggling at home. With Jaime Lozano, they have 1 win and 3 losses at Estado Corregidora, so that's not a good record to have, especially if they're looking to reach the playoffs. But with Leon, it's just interesting how a year ago, August 31st, 2016, they presented Javier Torrente, and then a year later, August 31st, 2017, they presented Diaz. So it's a new process starting over there in Leon. A team that has a lot of experienced players. I'm really intrigued with the Colombian defender they have, Mosquera. He looks really sharp on the marking, really tough. You don't want to mess with that guy. If you go into that zone of the field, you're basically screwed. So, I think he's a good defender there for Leon. Probably didn't have that type of defender for quite some time. So that's good to see. And just moving forward, but it was the week of the visitor, in my opinion, though. I think there were several results that lean towards the visitor this week.
I think it was only America and Monterrey who got wins at home. I think if I just looking at the schedule really quickly here.
Yeah.
Tom, what stood out to you from the weekend?
No, I think it has to be Chivas. I thought. Yeah, they've not played terribly at times this season. It's not. I think it's too easy for somebody to come out and say, Chivas were absolutely terrible before the international break, and then all of a sudden he turned it on. But they did start very well against Pachuca. There was like a injection of confidence into the team. I thought they moved the ball a lot quicker. I thought they were more positive. They took a few more risks. And just more assertive in the game. Almost suited them going away to somewhere like Pachuca, another team that come out and attack. I think that's something to think about as well, because teams these days playing against Chivas tend to sit back. And I think they've struggled to get past that so far this season. So, yeah, and I thought as soon as that first goal went in with Michael Perez scoring his first goal, then it was just like the confidence rose again, and it was kind of like they refound the DNA. They refound that kind of memory of how they reached the final and won the Clausura tournament. So for me, Chivas, and you look at the table now, and I know that week 8 and it was the first win, but they're only 4 points off the playoff places.
Yeah.
And they play Pumas at home next weekend, and Pumas are arguably the worst team right now in the league in terms of results. They're a real low Pumas. So you think, and Pumas never win in Guadalajara. So basically, they get 3 points there. They're right in the playoff mix, and this the champion. They know how to do this. They've got Alan Pulido's back sooner than you think. So I'm not saying it's completely changed with this one result, but you can definitely look, if you're a Chivas fan, you can definitely see a number of positives from this weekend.
Yeah, and I think some of the players who scored too. I think it was kind of important to see someone like Trophies get a goal, to see someone like Fierro get a goal, and I think those are kind of players that aren't exactly the favorites. I think they're players that kind of needed this, that kind of needed to kind of like prove that just like, no, we're here, we need to step up, and I think I don't know, it was interesting to see those two score, and also I think just to talk about this a little bit more, I think Pachuca's defense was just, I don't know, it was in shambles, man. It was really awful. I know they were playing. It was really, really awful. I know both the teams were quite open. Those first 5 to 10 minutes were a lot of fun to watch. But yeah, just the it was really strange to see that from Pachuca, because that's not really what you expect from them. That's not what you're really used to when you think of Pachuca and you think of their defensive line. But it was quite bad.
Yeah, there's been some just a real erratic performances from Pachuca this season.
Yeah,
it's just kind of up and down, and I don't really have a full handle on them just yet. They're just kind of confusing me at this point. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen with them the rest of the season.
Yeah. I think in certain way. I mean, I'm sure Naib has been following Pachuca more closely, but I think this season is, with the Club World Cup coming up. I think we see it regularly. From Mexican teams. I know it didn't happen with America last year as they reached the final, but we regularly see it. We regularly see this team struggling. It's almost like they got this thing, this at the back of their mind, and they can't quite click in the league. Also, I think if you look at the strike force there, you've got De La Rosa. You got Honda coming in, new to the league. Orreta Vizcaya, who obviously he played last season, and then Figueroa, and he's like, there's only one of that front four that was there last season. So there's a lot going on there. And I think that Alonso now, he's given the youngsters a chance. And I think that we're going to see Franco Jara, who's back from injury. I'm sure he's going to start next week. And, Sagal as well, the Chilean. It's unfortunate for the younger players, but for me, these are the games, for someone like Roberto de la Rosa. I know he's only a teenager, but you have to take these games, and if you're getting your chance to start games, you got to make an impact. And I don't feel he has over the last few weeks when he's beginning his chance.
Yeah, I think there's been several circumstances going on over there with Pachuca, injuries, suspensions. For example, this game in particular, Victor Guzman couldn't play because he was sent off against Xolos, and Guzman has 4 goals, if I'm not mistaken. He's one of the top goal scorers. So that was a big miss. Also, Eric Aguirre, I think he had already taken an important role in the team since the departure of Chucky Lozano, and was playing more offensively, actually, more up front with the front three. So I think that miss also kind of messes up a little bit with Pachuca. And Alonso has been sort of interchanging the center backs. It's Murillo Herrera sometimes, and sometimes it's Murillo Gonzalez. So it's still not a solid center back partnership going on over there in Pachuca. But it's also evolution. With Honda, it was his first start in Liga MX, and it's still kind of understanding. He's coming off a long trip from Japan as well in this process. So that actually also takes a toll, especially in the midfield. In the midfield, like you said, Tom, I think you brought a good point after the match with Gallito Vasquez and Michael Perez. They were phenomenal. They were machines on the midfield. And when you have those two, and you consider that, Honda made the long trip, Guti, Burrito, well, they have been on and off this season. Well, it was easy for Chivas to take control, especially after the first goal. But it's still a work in progress. But what also is really substantial and really important to note with Pachuca is that Alonso doesn't look at the name. Alonso doesn't look at the name or doesn't look at the age. If he sees that Figueroa or De La Rosa are doing better than Jara and Sagal, they're going to start, and that's a huge risk to take. Sometimes it's going to work out, sometimes it doesn't, like it did this past weekend, but it's the essence of the club.
Yeah, if you're talking about that too, he wasn't afraid to substitute Honda out either. And you can hear some of those boos, and you wonder, it's like, all right, are some of those boos toward Honda, or are there boos toward the decision to take out Honda? That is interesting, and it's really quickly on Honda too. I think I read something that over the international break, I think he took part in over 60 hours worth of travel to play 45 minutes, and then he went straight back to Mexico to play that match to earn his first start. So that's something to think about after that international break.
It also begs the question of why he started the game, you know?
Yeah.
So he's not played much football in general over the last few months. So after all that travel as well, it's like, what's the point? It's like, so Pachuca have got enough players, you know? It's not like they're desperate. I don't know. When you look at it like that, it's like, it's a bit strange. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see with Pachuca. But yeah, it's great to see, you know, in fact, just a quick point on De La Rosa, the striker. I mean, he's only 17 years old, and really, you know, I know it's probably been a bit harsh then, but you know, I think he's one of Mexico's top talents.
It's okay, I forgive you.
but I mean, if you speak to people in the game here and you know, say who are the really good young players coming up, De La Rosa is undoubtedly one of them. And so you know, definitely want to keep your eye on, even though he's not made his input so far.
The U17 World Cup in India is going to be fun. I mean, I think you see Lainez, De La Rosa, and Macias from Chivas as well. I mean, that's a heck of an attacking trio right there.
And I saw some of that scoring rate. Yeah, I saw some of the scoring rate that he had at the U17, U15 levels, and it was incredible. So, yeah, we'll keep. Yeah. Jason, what's? Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Tom.
I think as well from Atlas, just to add to the attacking mix for the Under-17 World Cup.
No, I think that's definitely another name to keep an eye on. Jason, what stood out to you this weekend? It wasn't hopefully the 0-0 between Puebla and Cruz Azul, but
that'd be a low light for sure. One of the worst matches I've seen in quite the long time.
Yeah.
No, I think not a personal highlight, but one I think that is a highlight is for America, Silvio Romero getting a few goals.
Yeah.
The line striker for America, someone that America really could use getting going into a rhythm and getting a couple goals against Veracruz. Maybe not necessarily the toughest competition in the league at this point, but just important for him to get a couple goals, and I think it could be important for the team moving forward. So I think that really stuck out to me. Could be important for America.
If I remember correctly, his last league goal before that game was in April.
It's been a while.
Yeah, so the fact that he scored twice in that game, especially when you see so much criticism towards him, like regularly from America fans, yeah,
and you see Benedetto now at Boca Juniors playing for Argentina. I mean, that's full Argentine international.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely worth noting, and it was obviously a big game for him, and just we'll see if he can continue to prove those doubters wrong. But guys, let's talk about Liga MX. Let's talk about the growth. Let's talk about. I mean, before we really, it sounds like we're spent about 30 minutes on this. Before we really start to criticize the league, let's first talk about, you know, how we've seen the league grow. Let's talk about some of the exciting things, some of the exciting developments that we've seen recently. Tom, we're going to go to you on this. I know you sent out a tweet recently about the internationalization that we've seen recently from the league, but, you know, where have we seen the league growing in recent years?
I mean, obviously, I think the quality of foreigner coming in now is massive, is much improved. I mean, you look at, you know, Honda signing. I mean, that's absolutely huge for the league. All right, he didn't have the best game last weekend, but he's an absolute star in Japan, in Asia. You know, he's a household name, and it brings eyes on the league from other places. You know, you look at even Ravel Morrison, who comes to Atlas. Right, it's a massive risk, but you know, Atlas don't get, you know, any column inches in England. And all of a sudden, if Ravel Morrison can start playing well, you know, the UK press, they're gonna, you know, I know they're already wanting interviews with him, and if he can actually play well, then people start talking about Atlas. Yeah, and obviously, you know, Colo up there at Tigres, I'm not going to pronounce his full name, but, you know, another... I asked my French friend how you pronounce the name, and he's like, nah, I don't even know. So I was like, forget it then. If he don't even know, I'm not even going to bother. But, yeah, Colo, he's going to be, you know, it's another French player. Who else we got recently? Iturbe coming to Cholos. That's you know, it's not absolutely huge because it's not a player that was on the rise in Europe, but he's
Bolaños is a top signing considering his recent years. And I mean, it was a good run in Emelec, and now he was in Gremio. Wasn't that good in the Gremio, but you know, a talented player as well, Bolaños.
Yeah. But I mean, I think the quality of players that are coming in is now pretty high, to be honest. I think you've got some very, very good players. I mean, look at Cholos right now. You know, Gustavo Bo comes in, and he's a top Argentine striker. you know, and it's just like nothing. It's not made a huge. When he signed, it wasn't like everyone was like, oh, this is amazing. People just said, yeah, good signing that. And then he starts playing and he starts banging in the goals.
Five goals in 5 consecutive games, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the amount of, you know, Latin American internationals, South American internationals, and, you know, it gives you a good indication that, you know, in that respect, the league is in a good place, without doubt.
Yeah. Naib, where else have you seen some growth? I mean, just kind of building off of what Tom has seen and just said, just like, what have you think that's kind of exciting about the development of Liga MX?
You know, I think when you look at this specific topic, I think the signings do take a certain precedent. I mean, I think that's one of the main ones. I mean, because that attracts other countries. For example, even, you know, seeing Paco Gemes arrive to Liga MX, that's a coach.
Yeah.
But that generates some type of curiosity as to what Liga MX is. You know, at one point Juan Malillo did it. You know, and Juan Malillo is, you know, one of Pep Guardiola's main advisors. So when Juan Malillo decided to come to Liga MX, to Dorados, you know, Dorados Sinaloa, and also bring alongside him someone like Pep, you know, that generated a lot of attention. So Mexico has made those splashes that generate attention. Also, I think in the youth teams, in the Mexico youth team specifically, I think they've won some type of respect. I mean, I think when you go around the world, the people do know that Mexico's youth teams tend to be competitive. You know, that there is a level of competition in the teams that is remarkable, you know, considering from the region, because with Mexico, at least in the U17 level, there has been some type of consistency since, you know, 2005 when they won the World Cup. You know, the same cannot be said about Argentina, for example, who has shown some type of lack of consistency in the youth team process. Because I remember when Argentina was led by Nestor Peckerman in the youth teams, they were flying. I mean, they were winning everything basically. And at least with Mexico, they have some success in the youth team process that gives them attention. I mean, this, of course, might not be the league, but I think the league in itself, certain clubs like Pachuca, Chivas, Santos, I would say, you know, Cholos to a certain extent as well, with that interesting connection it has with the U.S. and Mexico, have promoted a lot the youth teams. And that is something positive from the league, I think. Maybe it could be used better at the senior level, at the first team level, but at least you have a sense that at the youth team level, when these players that are you know, brought up in these clubs and they go to compete in international tournaments for Mexico's national team, they tend to do well.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a somewhat of a tangent, but if I remember correctly, I think Atlas sent out a tweet saying that it's like, oh, back in the day, we actually took part in a youth match against Manchester United's youth squad, and Morrison was actually in that Manchester United youth squad. And that Atlas's youth squad beat that Manchester United youth squad 2-1. It was just one result, one thing, but it does tell you that just like that these youth clubs are decent. They can compete at a pretty high level. And it is pretty exciting. And I think, I don't know, when you look at some of the other examples, I think one that Jason brought up for the guideline for the show, I think we talk about something that comes to mind for me as well, is just the ratings. That's just maybe because I'm based here in the United States. That's just something that I always try to talk about, because I feel like there are a lot of people out here, just soccer fans in general, who would immediately assume it's like, no, it's got to be the EPL. After that, it's going to be Major League Soccer, and then maybe you'll see Liga MX. But they just don't. They don't. Some of those fans who watch soccer every weekend, who don't think twice about Liga MX, perhaps for language reasons, who don't know about the immense power that it has, the incredible power it has, and the incredible power it will continue to have if it goes about this properly, with providing some English language content for Mexican Americans and second generation immigrants such as myself. But yeah, I think that's something that I feel like, I don't know, it just doesn't get talked about enough. At least for me, maybe it is talked about enough, but we'll go to Jason, some of his thoughts on what you think that some of the ways you've seen the Liga MX grow. But I think for me, I mean, you brought it up in the guideline, but that's what comes to mind for me is the ratings. It's incredible just to see.
Yeah, and they have to be doing something right. I mean, based on the ratings, it's the most popular league in the United States. I mean, looking at those ratings, and it's not close. And I agree with you, Cesar. Like, I don't think it's talked about enough. I think that gets into some of the issues that we're going to talk about today on the show, with the language barrier. But yeah, I mean, obviously doing something right, and I don't know if it's necessarily that they're doing anything or they've happened into it, but the league is immensely watchable. It's the product is strong. The product is good.
Yeah.
I don't think it reaches enough people, even though it does reach a lot of people. And there's a lot that the league can sit back and say, look at that. Look at what we have, because there's a lot of money in this league, and they're bringing in great players from around the world, more so now from around the world. But they've always brought in a high caliber of player from South America, and the league has always been a good mix of a feeder league to Europe in some ways. I mean, I think it's not always easy for players to make the move to Europe, but also a strong league in taking a lot of those players from South America, combining with the Mexican players, and it's just an overall great product. So I mean, there's a lot to really love about Liga MX, and we're obviously all here because we appreciate the game in Mexico.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's get into it. How can we improve Liga MX? What's wrong with Liga MX? Like, there's just, I don't know, we got about like 25 minutes here. Let's really get into it. And just let me go to Naive on this. Naive, when you think of something that really stands out to you, something that needs to be fixed, something that like needs to be improved upon, like what comes to mind for you?
No, I think what Jason just said is interesting. I mean, I feel that this league, Liga MX, should not only just be seen in the U.S. and Mexico. I mean, it just seems that the owners feel comfortable with that. It's like, oh, we can live with that forever. Like, okay, as long as it can show in Mexico and the U.S., we're fine. We get money and everything. But I think this league is so exportable that, I mean, I think it would be great if it could be watched, in all over the world if it's possible. Find deals. Sell the Liga MX as a product, as like the Premier League does, or like La Liga does, and sell those TV deals as a unit. I think if that really happens at one point, I mean that's actually good for players to move to Europe, because when players are analyzed by scouts, they don't really have that much tape, or legit tape, but this time, tape in not in the literal sense, but videos of the players, it will be easy. It will be more accessible. I think that is something that they have to realize. And when I talk about these TV deals as a unit and as one entity, I feel that sometimes Liga MX doesn't really act like one sole entity. Yeah. I mean, each club acts in their own way, and that has to be fixed as well. I mean, because over here in Mexico, it's always talked about these two TV networks that control kind of everything in the game. If that is still a precedent or something that is really still happening, then it's really hard for Liga MX to grow.
If I remember correctly, I saw a report that said that since Honda has made the deal with Pachuca, that they've sold close to 3,000 Pachuca jerseys in Japan. I know that might not seem like too many. Maybe it should be a lot more, but I think that says immediately the kind of impact that Liga MX can have. And once you actually get that product out there, like Jason was talking about, it's a very exciting product. You got it. We all saw that article from The Guardian early this year too, just talk about how exciting it is and how it is probably one of the most exciting leagues in the world. And it's sometimes frustrating to think about how it doesn't have a bigger reach. And I mean, one of my big problems with English language content, I think that's something that needs to be worked on. I mean, it's genuinely, I mean, we're here talking about it in English, and it's probably, maybe it's kind of a silver lining that's kind of good for us, is that because we're the only ones talking about it, it gives us all some work. But it's frustrating. It's really, really frustrating to only see two teams do it and to not see Liga MX and El Tri jump on this. And this isn't anything new. We've been talking about this for a long time. We've probably been talking about this since we started this show. Just how incredible it is that no one recognizes that just the immense amount of money that could be made here, the immense amount of attraction, the immense amount of just attention. It's really frustrating.
One real quick thought before Tom says his analysis and what he thinks. But all of this that we're saying needs organization, and if there's one thing that this league lacks, is that word, organization, from all levels.
Yeah. Tom.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, it's difficult. It is difficult. I think on the positive side, someone on the chat as well saying Liga MX Femenil I think we have to say, you know, we have to praise the league and the clubs for doing that, because it's been absolutely. I never thought we'd see it. I'm not going to lie. I thought they wouldn't get anywhere near doing it. I just thought there wouldn't be the will, and obviously it's been difficult for some of the clubs. You can see in some of the score lines, the clubs that have really put work in, and the ones that have kind of scrambled together a team at the last minute. But you know, that's a separate issue, and hopefully the league will continue to improve. But yeah, I mean, we touched on it. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, how do you want to measure the Liga MX? I mean, is it fair to measure against the Premier League, La Liga? Probably not. I think the short-term goal for Liga MX should be to dominate the Americas. You know, I think that's fair. And I think if you look in the Americas right now, obviously you've got the traditional Argentina, Brazil, but Argentina's an absolute mess, to be honest. The league's an absolute, like the TV deals are all over the place. They're really struggling financially. And Brazil, you know, it's not as strong as it has been. And then you've got MLS, and MLS has obviously got money. It's obviously organised, and it's got a goal. It's got a goal. It wants to be one of the best soccer leagues in the world. And you know, they've got a time frame. They're putting it into practice. You know, is it level with Mexico right now? Probably not. But the big strength that MLS has got, if you say the goal is to take on to be the best league in the Americas, the big strength of MLS is obviously financial, but it's a single entity. So your decision making is done with one path in mind, and the path is to make the league grow and to improve. And I think with Liga MX, you've got big problems with that, because, for example, you know, you've got the president of the league. You know, I've tried to interview him quite a few times, and it's just been, honestly, and I don't want to keep moaning, but you know, it's been a real struggle. And then I look at the US side and MLS, and Don Garber sits down with Grant Well at Sports Illustrated every year. I'm not saying, you know, that you know, I'm at Grant Well's level, but he also gives interviews to ESPN FC. He gives interviews to Goal. He gives interviews to other people. He sits down and he tells the tale of the league. You know, and it's very hard to get the Liga MX president to do that. And I'm sure, I'll tell you what, if there was a Mexican journalist who called MLS and said, you know, ESPN Mexico or something, said, hey, Mr. Garber, I'd like to do an interview on the growth of the league. As long as it's a reputable journalist, I'm pretty sure they'll get the interview. Whereas in Mexico, it's very difficult, that kind of thing. But, you know, I don't know. Sorry, I'll just quickly, just while I don't want to forget. But, you know, in Mexico, you've got 2 teams run by TV Azteca, 1 team run by Televisa, 1 team run by Grupo Imagen. So you got 4 teams out of the 18 run by media companies, you know, who are in competition with each other. And it's like, how to make decisions for the good of the league when you've got, you know, and even to people say sell a TV package. How are you going to do that when you've got media companies that own teams? Yeah. I mean, how do you even start that debate? I mean, it's just not going to happen. You know, you've got Iraragorri at Santos Laguna, who, you know, for me, that guy, I'm not friends with him or nothing. I've interviewed him, I think, 3-4 times. And every time I speak to him, I'm like, this guy needs to be the president of the league. You speak to him, it's like a different world than speaking to most people in Mexican football. The guy's like, he puts it all into a perspective. And, you know, it's rational, and he's like, he defends certain things. He'll defend, for example, Pacto de Caballeros to a certain degree. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, MLS has Pacto de Caballeros, you know, to a certain degree as well. That's also a closed system. But the point is, you've got to make your argument. You've got to get it out there. And you've got to make it open and say, this is how we do things. And if the players, you know, want to challenge it, then they let them challenge it. But, yeah, it's very difficult in Mexico. I think overall, the league needs to become a lot more professional, a lot more outward-looking. And there's certain things, you know, you've got certain teams in the league that, for me, really hold it back. I mean, if anyone ever did an investigation into some of the teams in the league and how they run, then I think there would be problems. And I think possibly for that reason, it's a very inward-looking league. They don't want kind of foreign press, and it's not. This isn't just for me. I'm talking about, you know, I actually get quite a lot of emails from people from outside, you know, foreign people who like, oh, how can I get in touch with this person, that person, and it's very difficult to sort things out, you know, here to get press basically from abroad.
Yeah, and I don't know. So NJP on the chat asks, Liga MX reaching its peak soon? And I don't know. I actually think the league is growing, but I think there's something to be concerned about. I think that's kind of what we're hitting on, is this league resting on its laurels a bit? Like, are they not taking all these things seriously because they are strong right now, because it is growing, because of the support they get from the US? But can we expect at some point, as MLS continues to grow and works for these things and outwardly tries to get bigger and gain more attention in the league, can we see Mexico kind of sliding a bit here? Can we see the Liga MX kind of sliding? I think it's possible. I think another thing is that we're looking at like, sorry, losing my train of thought here a bit, but
it's a very emotional conversation. It's very serious.
Something like that. But I think it was like 2011, 2012. I forget the year when the Liga MX officially became the Liga MX, when they rebranded as Liga MX from the Mexican Premier Division or whatever it was. And part of that wasn't just the logo and the name, which honestly that helps, but part of that was the kind of the centralized governance that was kind of slightly promised in that, is that there was going to be some decision making for a league. They were taking that Premier League approach that we're going to make some decisions centralized. And like you're looking at, we're kind of touching on like English language broadcasts in the US, which I think would be a massive step for the league. And like Tom mentioned, like how do you do that with all these media companies controlling it? That's valid, but if it's done centrally, right? It's in like, this isn't like a group decision. We have people at the top and we're going to, here's how we're going to sell the rights internationally. We're going to sell it to ESPN or Fox, whatever. If those decisions are made centrally, people can be upset about that in the league, but nothing's really done centrally with the league. I mean, it is all kind of the collective. And I think just like that lack of central decisions is one of the real problems with the league in general, because I don't think things really get done.
Yeah, and just to go back on some of what Tom was saying earlier, I mean, I know it's just talk about it just because it's something that we deal with a lot, but just some of those press problems, I mean, just to provide this coverage, I mean, I think a handful of us, we don't have to like specify which teams were not, but it's just, it was surprisingly difficult in the last playoffs, you know, for example, to try to do coverage. And it's crazy that it's just like when you're trying to provide this coverage and you aren't able to do that. And it just doesn't make any sense. And it's just I don't know. It could be a little frustrating as a journalist to want to promote that, and just that to be putting your heart and soul into this and to not have that reciprocation from the league.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think from the league's point of view, they don't really need to. I mean, I think the other thing that we got to mention when we talk about Liga MX right now and what's going on, for me, don't get talked about a lot, but there's a TV revolution happening.
Yeah.
In the Mexico's first division right now. I mean, you know, for the first time ever, teams it's kind of an auction for the TV rights. Whereas before they kind of had to go with Azteca or Televisa. And when I say before, like when I came to Mexico like 9 years ago, I think pretty much all the games were on TV, Azteca or Televisa.
Yeah.
And the extension of that is in the States, where, again, there's been a revolution. Teams like Chivas, I think Chivas have really led it, partly with Pachuca. I mean, Pachuca basically is the rebel. I mean, if you look at the organization, they want more power. Pachuca wants more power. Carlos Slim's just left. They've just kind of separated with Grupo Pachuca. I think it's Grupo Carson, no? Carson. So they've separated now. But anyways, I mean, that's another thing that's happening in the league with the TV deals. But yeah, I mean, I think they're very satisfied. I don't think there's I always describe it as a bubble. The Liga MX is like a bubble. I mean, if you're inside it and you understand it and you know what's going on, then it kind of makes sense. But if you're outside the bubble, then I mean, it's difficult to get involved with. I mean, I know Cesar, the English language media. I mean, for the Mexican national team, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it doesn't even matter about the Mexican American population. And when I say it doesn't matter, I mean, it's not what I really mean, but it's just you're a national team. You're a big national team. You tweet in other languages. It doesn't matter if you've got a kind of, an immigrant population in another country. You just do it. It's something you do. Look who is sponsoring the Mexican national team right now, and have a look where those companies are from. I mean, a lot of them are American companies. So for me, it makes absolutely no sense. But Yeah, just final one just before stopping. I mean, when I say a professionalization all around, just people can go and have a look. Now, have a look at the Liga MX Facebook page. You know, when you look at the stuff they've got up there, and it's like really wordy, a lot of words, kind of, you know, and like stuff that isn't really useful. To be honest, like photo galleries and stuff. I mean, I'm not sure people are loving, you know, photo galleries are the thing right now with, you know, 18 photos, you know, from all of the games. I don't know, but you know, it's very wordy. And then you look at the MLS one, and it's kind of sharp, hip, kind of it invites you in. You know what I mean? You can buy tickets on there. It's just a different way of doing things, and then you go on the websites, and I mean, it's a different world. It really is a different world. The Liga MX website continues to be really poor. I mean, for a lot of people,
and that's after a massive improvement. The current website is a huge improvement to what it used to be, and and also this new website too. At one point, like it was almost like it had Spanglish. I don't think it meant to be in Spanglish. It just
mine still is.
Is it still? I don't know, but it's just like it was like the default website layout was in English, and no one bothered to change it. And that was after they renovated the whole thing. Now after they changed it, and it's an embarrassment. And then you go to the MLS website, and you click on an MLS game. You're like, oh, this is gorgeous. This is incredible. I get stats. I get like Twitter stuff going on. Just like I would never in a million years expect that from Liga MX. And it's, you know, it's frustrating. Yeah.
Real quick about the Carlos Slim situation. I mean, I haven't delved that much into the information, but it's just quite strange that one of the richest men in Mexico and in the world decides to pull off from Mexican football. I mean, what does that say? Does that say that it's not profitable for the richest men in the world because of what just Tom said? It's just a bubble. If you're not part of that bubble, you're not gonna make money. I mean, and you're talking about the Slim right now is happy because he has a club in second division in Spain, Real Oviedo. I mean, he was okay. Might as well just worry about that team right now, and who cares about the 30% I had with León and Pachuca, which wasn't that bad. I mean, think about it. León got a bicampeonato, Pachuca won the league, and they also won the Conca Champions. So it wasn't a. It would have made sense to keep on going with this project. But why did he decide to pull away from this? I mean, maybe my idea that I actually thought that he was going to end up buying León, for example. You know, it kind of makes sense. You know, why not buy León? You know, since it's there.
No, but I think Slim. I don't think he was too interested in football, to be honest. I mean, he owns Claro TV as well, and I think it was just a clear bid to get, you know, to own a club, get some power within Mexican football, and kind of, you know, he's got an ongoing rivalry with, you know, with Televisa, with the TV companies. They wouldn't let Claro TV be on kind of terrestrial air, and he wouldn't let them kind of get into the mobile world, the cell phones with Telcel, because Slim owns Telcel as well. So, I mean, these are the kind of things that are going on behind the scenes in Mexican football, and it makes it very difficult to improve. But I mean, overall things are going quite well. I think. I mean, I don't want to be too kind of down because
look, for example, Tigres, I think it's just a phenomenal story right now. But like let's say something real quick. Tigres already brought in Gignac. They brought in Delor. They brought in Colo. Shouldn't they already have a French account by now? I mean, it's been what, 2 years already? I mean, that's so, but is there no money to have a French writer to just tweet stuff? Maybe he doesn't even have to be in Monterrey.
No, you just wait until they Google Translate that stuff off into French again, like they do with English sometimes.
Those type of things, you got to react real quick. I mean, for example, right now with Pachuca should already have something in English because they have Honda, they have Omar Gonzalez, and then the youth academies, they have players like Abraham Romero and Edwin Lara that speak perfect English.
Yeah. You don't even have to start. You don't even have to start an English language account. You just every now and then do something in English or you do something in Japanese and. You know what I mean? If you've got Honda, not if you're like not got Honda.
That doesn't make a ton of sense.
If you've not got Honda, you might struggle.
Yeah. Well, you guys just brought it up. I mean, we're looking more so just long term. Long term, you think about the competition that MLS is going to have. A competition. I think personally, I mean, we don't have to dive into this. I think MLS might exceed Liga MX within about 10 to 20 years. We'll see. I mean, we're just looking into the future. Some things that need to be fixed. But the league is still undoubtedly growing, and I think at the moment it's improving. But are there any effects of this growth? Maybe some negative stuff that we might see, and some negative stuff that we're perhaps seeing right now. I'm going to go to Jason on this. Anything that you've seen recently that this growth is having on the league?
Well, one thing I always think about with Mexico, and I think oftentimes with the growth of the league, we think about the effects on the national team.
Yeah.
And they don't always work together. And I think in Mexico, a lot of times they don't work together. And I think that's common. I think you'll see that in a lot of leagues around the world, where sometimes the growth of the domestic league can, in fact, hinder the national team.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily ready to say that's definitely happening in Mexico, because I actually think the league is still on the stage where it's actually helping the national team. I think there's an argument to be made there that there's some hurt, but the thing that really sticks out to me, and has for a while, is just how hard it is for players to move to the biggest leagues in the world, to move to Europe. Yeah. And that's just because of the money in the league, and because this league is getting stronger all the time. The fees that are paid for some of these players just within the league are growing and getting higher and higher, that there isn't a lot of incentives for clubs to sell to Europe. And a lot of times these players want to make those moves, but it's difficult for them to make those moves because the clubs just don't want to sell. And it's understandable in some ways, because they can make more money selling these players domestically. So I think that's a bit of an issue with the league. And it just seems to be getting worse and worse, because you have clubs bringing in more players for big money from Europe at this point, because they're becoming more big. It's like Tigres is doing, like, all these players they're bringing in. Players can get trapped. And we've seen it over and over again, where they're ready to make the moves and they just can't. So for me, that's a real issue that this strong league is creating. And I think it's a difficult one to fix in some ways.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, Jurgen Damm said that he would like to move abroad, but that he mentioned that it's quite pricey to be making that move abroad.
I mean, Jurgen Damm, I've interviewed him a few times. He's desperate to go to Europe. I mean, he said that in interviews. He said that he'd love to go to Europe. He's got an EU passport. He had offers as well. I'm not saying he's the best Mexican player, but he's had offers to go to Europe. He's desperate to go to Europe. And quite frankly, Tigres have just rejected the offers and said they want way more. And basically he's priced out of it right now. So the only option Jurgen Damm has got is to run down his contract, to be honest.
Yeah.
Unless he does amazing stuff for the World Cup and someone comes in. But I mean, there's no freedom of contract for Mexican domestic players. I mean, that's why the prices are so high. It's artificially inflated. There's no Bosman rule. So what happens is, basically, if you're a player in Europe and you've got 2 years on your contract, then over time your transfer fee will go down and down and down until it's zero, like Alexis Sanchez right now with Arsenal. In Mexico, that doesn't happen. Your transfer fee will stay flat like that, or go up if you start doing well, down, because there's no. I mean, players have got away, got out of that by moving to Europe. Yeah, then so come back.
I think we lost you there for just a second there, Tom. But yeah, just to talk about Jurgen Damm a little bit longer too. You think about this isn't just a young guy anymore. I mean, he's going to be turning 25 this year. This guy who hasn't been able to make that move at this point. So it's no longer a young, exciting Mexican talent. Now teams might be looking at him and say, like, this is a guy who's still struggling to, get first team minutes for Tigres, despite how talented Tigres are. And I just do wonder about that. This isn't someone who's a teenager anymore. He's going to be 25 this November.
Yeah, if anything, you would imagine his value has decreased.
I guess that's true.
He's not as young as he used to be, and he really hasn't made that step into a full-blown regular starter with the national team, where a few years back he was looking that way, he was trending that way, and it never really happened. He hasn't really progressed. So but I doubt the price for Tigres is really dropping.
But I mean, it's got nothing to do with the league. The league doesn't care. The league wants to keep good players. I think it's a completely separate debate, to be honest. One of the other problems with Mexican football, Liga MX and just the whole structure is, and I think it's being talked about now by the owners, is the second division, the relegation system. I mean, for size, what's the population of Mexico? 130 million.
Yeah.
120, 130 million. Yeah. I mean, for a country that size, you've got 18 teams. you know, you've got like probably 5 of them that are pretty crap, to be honest, in terms of like organizations, like, you know, in terms of youth system. So therefore you get rid of 5, you've got 13 teams. You know, throw in a couple of the second division teams that are, you know, real teams, you know what I mean? That Juarez and, you know, Dorados de Sinaloa, like there's some decent, Atlante possibly, and some decent teams in the second division, but you've got like, what, 20 professional teams for 130 million people. I mean, the potential in Mexican football, this is just like what we see is the tip of the iceberg. Like if you look at the, you know, if you live from living down here and like, you know, getting to know the game, I mean, my reference point for kind of youth football is England, because that's where I grew up. And if you play for a club in England, everybody's registered. You know, Manchester United scouts are going to 8-year-old games, 5-year-old games, 6-year-old game. You know, Manchester City, Oldham, Rochdale, the area I'm from, everything. Well, the scouts are going to all the games. It's very difficult not to be spotted. Yeah. Whereas in Mexico, I still think, you know, it's the nets. I don't know. There's a lot of holes in the net for players to get through.
Although if you go on the Wikipedia page for the English soccer pyramid, it's crazy. You look at it and you think that everyone in England must play soccer. Just how far? I mean, it's impressive. What I'm trying to say, I know I'm making a joke here, but I'm saying more than this actually is extremely impressive once you see how far and organized it is, and just the levels and depth of just that. I don't know. It's incredible to see. That's just something you're not seeing in Liga MX.
Something real quick about the point about, you know, the youth play, well, the Mexican player heading to Europe, and the lack of opportunities probably that the Mexican player might have now in first division in Liga MX. I mean, I think we're seeing an interesting trend right now with the cases of Gudiño, of Gobea, of Antuna, of Joao Malek, who got loaned from Santos to FC Porto B. These are interesting stories, because when the club sees that they're not going to play in first division and there's actually a European club interested in them, they're willing to send them over there and see what happens. You know, maybe they sell him, maybe they loan him, but I think that's a step. You know, what's happening right now with Gobea, it might be Belgium and whatnot, but to see a player already over there and kind of making a name for himself, it's way better than to see him get stagnated in the league, you know, and not advance professionally and personally, because once you make the move from Mexico to Europe, it's a whole different ballgame. It's not the same type of football, you know. It's the whole different perspective of the lifestyle and whatnot.
Well, but I mean, I don't think that's got anything to do with the league. I mean, it depends what the league wants. But the league isn't going to look after the national team. I think if we've learned anything since the split from Liga MX to the FMF, I think that's what we've learned. I mean, they're not bothered. I mean, they did the 10-8 rule, they did the 9-9 rule, and then they defended it by saying, you know, that there's guaranteed at least Mexican players, which to a degree is true, but they want big name foreign players, the league. You know, they know that that's how they get more kind of credibility in terms of, you know, worldwide, and not by bringing through a player like Gobea. I mean, I completely agree with you, Nayib, with everything you said, you know, but I think it's a separation. That's good for the national team. But I mean, the biggest irony for me in Mexican football is the amount of money that Liga MX clubs and FMF have put into youth production, only not to play players. I mean, to play very few of these players is the biggest irony that exists for me in Mexican game. And
of course, I mean, no, that's definitely a point, Tom, there. That I mean, it's two separate things here. But I mean, of course, when you look at the whole aspect of it, you wish that they were together and that there will be a positive correlation between both. But that's not the case. Here is also another topic that we can bring to the table is, you know, the fact that Liga MX teams are not competing against Copa Libertadores team or CONMEBOL clubs anymore. You know, what is that? That sort of cuts a little bit the progression also of Mexican teams, but because I think that it did benefit Tigres to play against River Plate. It did benefit Chivas when they went to South America and beat Brazilian sides over there, America and Cruz Azul. You know, that was positive for Liga MX. And now you don't even have that. You know, you have to figure out how to compete with what you have in your region, which is CONCACAF. And as we know, CONCACAF is a region that is barely, you know, growing, and it is at its early stages as possible. You know, it's not that advanced as it is in CONMEBOL. So that is another thing that Liga MX has to deal with at the moment, no?
Yeah, deal with, and hopefully at some point in the near future they can get back into that competition, because I do agree it did provide an entirely new experience. And although I did say that, like, I think MLS is growing, and I think MLS is going to potentially exceed Liga MX in the maybe down the line, but I think at the moment, obviously, Liga MX is better, and it doesn't really, I don't know, benefit those Liga MX teams to be going up to taking on those MLS teams, where you would rather have them taking on those South American.
But just to play devil's advocate again, from the league's point of view, with the Copa Libertadores, everybody knows, and I love the competition. Like I got the chance to go to Argentina recently, absolutely blown away by the atmosphere in a San Lorenzo game, and I went to River Plate as well. But from the league's point of view, I mean, what's the point in the Libertadores? All right, I get it. If a Mexican team win it, it brings you prestige. But if you send 4 teams out of 18 to the Libertadores every year, you know, and those teams take the Libertadores seriously, that means they're not taking the league seriously.
Yeah.
Which means that the product is weakened, you know, and I think that's how a lot of these teams are seeing it. Knowing that you're going to go to Buenos Aires, which is a 10, 11-hour flight from Mexico, or, you know, a 9-hour flight or whatever. But I think that's the issue. I think there's now a kind of a strain of thought within the teams, certain teams, not all of them, that says, you know, we've got to look after this product, and our product is the Liga MX. It's not the national team. It's not, you know, kind of winning Libertadores. It's about making money right here and being as strong as we can. And that's why, you know, something like relegation, the end of relegation is on the table. I mean, that's what's being talked about right now.
Yeah. Following on the chat, Javier Hernandez, not Chicharito, says that he also wishes that we were in Copa Libertadores still. Gives them more exposure, gets the clubs taken more seriously. If teams perform well, gives them opportunities to improve. But yeah, following up on what Tom just said, I think there's something to that, because I mean, even when the Liga MX clubs were in Copa Libertadores, they weren't necessarily always supported in those ventures. I mean, there was no adjustments to the schedule made. I mean, the league still needed to be a priority, and there was a sacrifice that needed to be made, just as Tom said. Like, if clubs were taking that tournament seriously, the Copa Libertadores, it severely affected their league play, because there were no allotments for it. The schedule could not be adjusted, where in South America, a lot of those teams had those things going on. So, like, it was a disadvantage for Mexican clubs to be traveling, because for just about every away game, that means a big travel, and it was difficult to achieve what you wanted to achieve in Copa Libertadores, because Mexican clubs are at a bit of a disadvantage going to South America in that tournament.
No, I think that's it.
The travel distances are crazy. I mean, it's not the same like in Europe, where, you know, you can go from Madrid to Paris in like 2 hours, and the distances are shorter. And I think that geographically messes us up, us in Mexico. Yeah. But, you know, it does, you know, that essence or that sort of competition. It is different, you know. It is different. I think that's something that we can't disagree with. But you know, with the whole second division thing also worries me, because if you really eliminate the second division, like, what happens to, you know, tons of players that, you know, play there and make a living there? I mean, it's like, it's all going to disappear. That also notes the lack of organization. I mean, just think about it. I mean, over there in England and France and Spain and Germany, there's a strong second division that permits the players to develop. Here, we're basically cutting the development and just focusing on the league. Oh, keep bringing the foreigners, and let's make our product more grandiose and forget about development of our own talent. You know, if that's the thinking going on right now within the owners in Liga MX, Mexican football is gonna go downhill from here if that's the case.
All right, guys. Well, just to close out the show, I think Naeem just talking about that. I think that kind of comes to mind. Another question is, if you were to make one change to the Mexican league, or just Mexican soccer in general, you know, what would that change be? Jason, we're going to go to you first on this. What would that change be if you could make one change to Mexican soccer?
There's a whole bunch we mentioned on the show. I think would be pretty helpful. But if we have to keep it to one, I think the thing I've wanted for the longest time, and I don't see it happening anytime soon, but the one thing I'd really like to see is just a proper, full-blown English broadcast of the Mexican League in the United States. Like, starting there, I'd love to see that, because I think there's a lot more potential for growth within the league in the United States, as just the sport in general becomes more popular in the United States. I think this is a league that is a quality league that's in the right time zone for the United States, where it's accessible. And if the language barrier were brought down and it was put on a channel where a large population that wouldn't normally turn to those Spanish language channels had easy access to it, I think, and this is only a think, but I really think the league can continue to become more popular.
Yeah, like this isn't my main point, but something like, for example, the 10-8, the 9-9 rule, how it pertains to Mexican Americans, for example. That's just an example. You're shooting yourself in the foot for what Jason just said. Then in terms of TV coverage, press, basically a Mexican American who is if you got one Mexican parent when you're born, you're a Mexican citizen. The Mexican government recognizes you as a Mexican citizen. So therefore, to then not be able to play in the Mexican league as a Mexican, as a homegrown player, is you're shooting yourself in the foot. Not just because you're missing out on players, but you're missing out on all the stories that come from a player brought up north of the border, but a lot of times bilingual, who's playing in Mexico. You can tell the story. Case in point, Hercules Gomez. How many people in the States got involved in Liga MX? Not necessarily with a Mexican background even, and they started getting behind teams. Our friend Kim Tate, who Santos Laguna, I think she was kind of brought in with that Hercules Gomez story, and then, then now she's working at Santos. I mean, it does help to have those kind of figureheads to hook stories on and to get people involved, because people watch teams, or increasingly these days, especially younger people, are watching players. They like to, they support players no matter where they go. And I think that's the Liga MX has to do as much as they can to promote that. And the Mexican American thing for me is just so stupid, to be honest.
Yeah. So Tom, that's what you would do, is you would change the whole Mexican American thing for the
no, it wouldn't be the one.
Oh, are you thinking in two answers here, Tom? All right, we'll allow it. We'll allow it, Tom. We'll allow it. All right. What's the second thing you would change, Tom?
All right. Well, I'm just going to go for a completely selfish one. It's completely selfish. But I'd say like a complete modernization, professionalization of the, the media, club media, the way things are run. I think that includes, it doesn't necessarily have to include, kind of
qualified stadiums. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I think, it doesn't necessarily include like kind of social networks exclusively in English, but why not throw some tweets out now and then? Why not, experiment a little bit? I mean, you're reaching a new market. Mexican clubs have got a market on the doorstep, in the United States. You don't even have to do much, I mean, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, Cesar, what you said then, I mean, having Wi-Fi in stadiums now for journalists is an absolute must. I mean, there's no point me going. The amount of times that I'm thinking, I'm here at my house and I think, what's the point me going? If I don't have Wi-Fi at the stadium, then, today, what's the point of me going? If I can't, use my social networks, then people who are sat at home have got they can do more stuff than I can from the stadium. And therefore it's pointless. Access to players, interviews, stuff like that. Just like the mentality and making it more professional in terms of, getting these stories out. Because the amount of times, your interview requests just get completely ignored. I mean, it does get you down. I'm not gonna lie. It really does get you down, because it's your job, it's your work. You want to be proud of it, and you live here. You've gone out of your kind of comfort zone to live in a new country, and then you want to promote this product, and you go in there with kind of, a positive intention to do a good story about somebody, and then you can't get the access. And I think it's highly frustrating. But stuff like that, press passes. We know we've all had problems. For example, with the national team, it's difficult for us to get press passes. It's difficult to get interviews. It's difficult to get access to tell these stories. And I think what that change kind of feeds into the wider kind of topic that we're talking about. Feeding the narrative, getting some kind of getting the conversation going about this league, in English and Spanish or whatever. But just making it kind of cooler and kind of hipper, and I don't know. Yeah, that's it.
No, I wholeheartely agree there. It's I obviously dealt with a lot of that stuff as well. Naib, what's the one thing you would change?
No, there's so many things. I mean, right now, for example, there's been bad moments and good moments, but there's people in the league that have helped. Whenever you want an interview, they're there for you and they help you. So I mean, for example, Santos, Aldo, and Kim have been great. Over there in Puebla, Mercedes has been amazing. In Pachuca, Juan Vergara has also been great. So to those people that in Querétaro with Alejandro, whenever you knock the door, he's there. I mean, so this case is where, they respond to you, sometimes no. There's other, press people that might take a while to answer you, but that's kind of the problem they have to deal with. But I with this with all this situation, really, I mean, I don't really. There's so many things to change that it's kind of difficult to answer. I mean, I wish the league could improve massively. That I think the word that always comes back to my mind is just the lack of organization in some areas. That could be better to get the information across. I think when that happens,
for example, for you with press passes, how difficult has it been? Yeah. Your general experience in Mexico City as a foreign journalist covering it in English, how easy has it been to get access to Cruz Azul, Pumas, and America?
Yeah. Well, for example, Cruz Azul has been quite difficult. I mean, Cruz Azul is, it's really limited to get in. I mean, you have to really know the guy that gives you the opportunity to get in. But then
you could use that. You could apply that to just about all areas of the club, really. I mean, that statement right there. I mean,
one of the difficulties we have. One of the difficulties we have as as working for ESPN is the fact that over here the press people see ESPN as one entity, like just one. So if they already give a press pass to a ESPN Mexico guy and an ESPN TV person, then they're like, we already gave 2 to them. We can't give you any because we already gave 2 to them. We already gave you 2 passes to ESPN. But do you have to explain to them, well, this actually is going to come out all over the world in English. People are going to read about Liga MX in English. And you have to repeat that same story over and over and over and over again until they actually get it. And when they get it, you might have a shot. But it is really frustrating when you introduce yourself and they don't understand that you're coming from an international media. Yeah. That you have to paint the picture right in order to get it, for them to understand it. And it's just sometimes baffling to hear the stories. For example, one that Tom told me, that when Tomas lived in Morelia, it's like they didn't know what France football was. I mean, who doesn't know what France football is? I mean, that's one of the most important magazines in all the world that covers football. And to ask Tomas what France football was, it's just crazy to think that actually happens in this country. But I think one of the things that has to change in Mexico is that more people that are knowledgeable about the game, like former players, have to be involved more in the game, like at clubs, at national team level. I mean, I don't like that a lot of players like going to the TVs and become commentators, and they really don't focus on like helping the clubs grow and prosper. I mean, what I admire is someone like, for example, Marco Garces, a former player that perhaps wasn't like well known at Hugo Sanchez level, but what he's doing at Pachuca is making Mexican football grow somewhere or another. And that I think is beneficial for the game. I think because former players know how it works, know the ins and outs, the bad and the good in Mexican football, and I think those people need to understand that they need to be more directly involved with the game. Being on TV is not directly involved with the game.
But I don't think all of them are like brilliant, you know what I mean? For example, Garces, I mean, he started reading about kind of science and the way you can apply it to football when he was a player. You know what I mean? He used to travel around with the team and be reading books, and everyone thought it was weird. And then after he finished his career, he studied the same actual degree as Juan Carlos Osorio in Liverpool, science and football. I think, I agree. Garces is absolutely brilliant. You need as many people like him as possible. And there are really, really good people who you kind of would really trust. But anyway, just a little aside there.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of my point. I mean, I wish that there were more. For example, someone like Bucetich right now that's not coaching. Yeah. I think as an administrative, it'd be interesting to see what he does, because he understands the game, and he's one of the most, if not the most winningest head coach to ever win Liga MX. So it'd be interesting to see him in another role that could potentially help the league. But then again, we know that it wasn't the good way the national team acted with him. a couple of years ago.
Well, the one thing that I would change is that I would raise a certain screen in the Estadio Jalisco as soon as possible.
Solid change.
I think that'd be quite important. No, okay, just messing around. I think I personally, for me, I mean, we don't have to get into it too much, but I think I would like to see I'd like to see 2 teams get promoted and 2 teams get relegated. I think just to give a little bit more legitimacy to the second division. I know we could talk about a lot about like whether some of the second division teams are at the same level as those first division teams, but I do think that it's just excruciatingly hard for those second division teams to be making it into the first division. So I think that just providing an opportunity, perhaps just to I don't know, give a little bit more of an incentive for those, especially those owners who are in charge of those second division teams, to see that opportunity for growth when you can actually get a spot in the first division, as opposed to winning a title, then having to face the other winners of the other season in that one game, and then it's just those 2 games. It's just, I don't know, it's just ridiculously impossible. So I would like to see 2 teams get promoted, 2 teams get relegated.
Yeah, I mean, this situation with Lobos WAP as well. I mean, it is. I don't know. I thought it was. I mean, I don't want to. MLS has got its problems, and the quality is still not there. But I don't know. Watching Atlanta United play the first game in Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Yeah.
Was it on Saturday or Sunday? I can't remember now. But,
Yeah, it was yesterday, no?
yeah, and then the day before I was watching Lobos WAP against Morelia. And you got the running track around the stadium. It was raining. It was really poor quality. Lobos WAP haven't even got a TV deal.
Yeah.
I don't know, and it just kind of felt like, so they did it themselves for free, and there was problems with the transmission. It just felt like, man, this ain't good. And if you're looking this from kind of abroad and thinking, all right, let's tune into Lobos WAP Morelia, you think this is a poor product, to be honest.
But this is the first season that they're up here. Maybe you would think that if they can stick around, you think if they can stay around a little bit longer, they could potentially make more money, provide those renovations for the stadium, get a bigger TV deal. That's just what comes to mind for me. I don't know if we're gonna. I know it's. You just mentioned Atlanta United, with their nice stadium that they're gonna be sharing with the Atlanta Falcons, but I don't know. I think give those teams a little bit of time. Give those teams. I mean, we could just. I know that's a different question. Just maybe fixing the entire relegation system so it isn't based off the results from the past 3 years, or 3 years in comparison to that 1 year that one promoted team gets. But I would just like to see one more team given that chance. And I think if they have that time in Liga MX, that they could potentially, get that money, get those funds to potentially renovate those stadiums and potentially fix those.
I think that the stadium. I don't think the stadium itself's a massive problem. It's just a team that doesn't really have any fans even. Yeah. But it's not. I'm not blaming Lobos WAP.
That could be more of a Puebla problem,
but I'm not blaming the club itself. I mean, it's just the status quo of the league. I mean, this ridiculous situation where they're supposed to, they have to negotiate with one TV company, and then they kind of get held to ransom. Then the other TV companies are like, because it's so difficult to stay up. I mean, you have to do well in your first season, and so because it's so difficult to stay up, then obviously the TV companies don't want to offer too much.
No.
Because they know there's a high percentage chance they'll go down. It's like ESPN with Leones Negros. They invested in the team. They go straight back down. After some dodgy, they have some really bad luck with refereeing Leones Negros. And you think if you're a TV company now with Lobos WAP, you see them bottom of the relegation table. We're 8 games into the 17 plus 8. What is it? The 25? No. So you've only got 25 games. Half of them at home. I mean, how much are you going to pay for 12, 13 games? I mean, it's a structural problem with the league more than Lobos WAP. But I do agree with you, Cesar, about opening it up. Because I think more than anything, the other side of that is you get rid of some of the deadwood, some of these clubs that have been, just don't have a project, they're not really trying to go anywhere.
Speaking of Puebla, I mean, honestly, it's just like I wouldn't mind seeing someone like Puebla go down. I wouldn't mind seeing someone like a team like that get relegated, seeing someone new take their spot. So that's just what comes to mind as well. I mean, you just touched upon it right there, but just seeing some of those teams who have been quite safe for a while, because in comparison to those other squads that get recently promoted, it's a little tough for those teams to stay up. But yeah, no. Anywho, guys, it's been, I think we've been talking for almost, I don't know, it's definitely been over an hour now, and we can keep talking about this. But let's wrap things up. I'm gonna give. Let's have some final thoughts. I'm gonna give this one to Jason. Jason, it's up to you. Are you ready for this? Are you
Let's
all
do
right
it.
with this?
Sure.
All right,
Let's do it.
Jason, give us your final thoughts. Maybe about anything we talked about today. Maybe something to look forward to. Anything. You're gonna close out our show.
Okay, well, I'm just going to continue to harp on my big point because I have the stage, so I'm just going to do that. So I think the one thing for me, I think that, I mean, you can doubt the importance of the language barrier in the United States for getting games in English. But I think if a broadcaster really took those rights and had full league-wide control of English language broadcast, then you could see them investing in more English language content as well. I mean, they would have a priority to say, we bought these rights. Now we're going to invest in more writing in English about the league. And maybe this would spur things on. So I think the potential for growth just from that one thing alone could kind of have a ripple effect. So that's why I think that would be something that'd be so important that I don't necessarily see happening anytime soon. But yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. Univision have got, one game every weekend at least on the Facebook in the US. It's a good step.
Right.
Obviously it's not the same as being on TV. But this is my question. It's a rhetorical question. Why don't the Liga MX post it on Facebook? They've got 7 million.
Yeah.
They've got 7 million people liking the page. Put it on your Facebook. Put it on your Twitter. Promote the fact that if you want to watch a game in English in the United States, it's out there.
Right.
I don't even belong to Univision, but I can't believe this disconnect between the league and the product, which is the same thing. It's little things like that. You have to be interconnected.
And then isn't Univision doesn't Univision show all the games now? Liga MX games. They have all the Liga MX teams. I think they have all of them except Lobos or something like that.
I think that's right.
Yeah, so it's somewhere around there. I mean, it's a lot of teams. I mean, we're talking. It's sort of like this idea that I was saying. I mean, it looks like a single entity now in the U.S. But it's not in the case here in Mexico.
Yeah.
Or that if it's working well in the U.S., why not export that idea somewhere else to the world? Like I said, and also about the teams, real quick, especially from Mexico City to the southern part. I mean, Tom has been in Chiapas, for example. I haven't been to Oaxaca, but I've been to Puebla a lot. The economic situations of these parts of the country are not as strong, I would say, as in the northern part of the country. And I think that also pays a toll in these clubs that are trying to subsist or trying to stay alive, and it doesn't work out for the most part. So it's these little details that also have to be paid attention, sociological and all that stuff, because at the end it also comes down to the money, and there are some areas that have more money than other areas.
Yeah.
But this is one thing, and sorry if I keep going on here, but one thing Cesar wants to go, but it annoys me when people say, Mexico, it's a poor country, they can't do it, because I just think it's a negative attitude. Mexico can organize a really great football league. It's already got a very good football league. It can make it brilliant. It's got everything it needs. And sometimes, the financial side, obviously it's difficult, especially in certain parts of the country, but they still pay the players absolutely loads. They'll bring a Colombian in and pay him absolutely loads instead of playing a local kid from Chiapas. You know what I mean? A local kid from Veracruz coming through. So I mean, it's their decision as well. But anyways.
Well, I mean, like the lowest teams in La Liga aren't promoting the league abroad. The league is doing that. Yep. Right, and that's what's missing here. Lobos WAP aren't going to go promote Liga MX. It's up to Liga MX to do it.
Yeah, well, that was fast. We just had Jason had the final talking point, and then it went through Naive and Tom a little bit there, and then it went back to Jason. So that was perfect, guys. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Naive. Thank you, Jason. Obviously, it's always a lot of fun and sometimes frustrating. That's the third time I've said the word frustrating, and that's probably normal when I'm talking about Liga MX and just press coverage and whatnot. But guys, thank you all. Thank you for watching the show. Always a good time talking about Liga MX. And have a good night. And we'll all see you on the next week of the Mexican Soccer Show. Have a good night, guys.